Good morning and welcome back to the Namaste experience. It is Monday morning and we stand ready to step into an experience that is wholly beyond our ability to think or to figure out, to think that we can understand something that is wholly and completely beyond our intellectual understanding, and yet something that is so intimate, so close, that it's almost like breathing the air. It's always with us, always in us, always all around us. All we need to do is to realize, to see through our real eyes that which has always seen and known us. So, today's lesson is going to be called Think Less and Love More. That's the whole thing, isn't it? Isn't that the whole spiritual process, to stop thinking that we can think our way into an experience that is wholly beyond thought? Or the idea that we can know God intellectually, that we can figure it out. How many times have you or me, have any of us set our minds upon figuring out that which figured us out a long, long time ago? I often say that we don't have to get this. We just have to realize that it got us a long time ago. We don't have to figure this out. It figured you out, the real you, a very long time ago. So, if we do say, yes, we do actually say, that God is love, then the act of realizing God in our lives can only be done through love, not through trying to grasp something that is wholly beyond the intellect. The only way we can experience a God that is love is through love, through loving no matter what. Giving up the need to try and figure out what or who God is or how it works or anything like that. In fact, I would say the quicker we do that, the more fun we're going to have, the deeper the experience is going to be, and the more aliveness we're going to experience even here. Even in our day-to-day lives, even in the midst of the possible turmoil or challenging situations, we will experience an aliveness that is beyond this world, because we're giving up the need to understand that which we could never understand intellectually. Oh, someone is unmuted. Make sure I'm going to just go ahead and mute everybody here myself. Okay, sometimes people get unmuted accidentally, so we'll just do that. So, here's what we're going to do. I want to share a new video that I created last night using some of the teachings of Thomas Merton. I've been immersing myself in Merton. As you know, we're preparing for a possible feature-length narrative film on a particular moment in Thomas Merton's life. If you didn't hear me talking about this last week, I'll remind you that there was a period, and probably many periods, but one particular period in which Thomas Merton, the great Trappist monk, living in his hermitage outside of the Gethsemane Monastery in Kentucky, where he had a crisis of faith. Or it might be better to say that he felt intellectually that he should leave the monastery and go and be more active in the world in 1966, which is at a time very similar to what we're experiencing today, where there's a lot going on, a lot that is needed, and as many of us may have been feeling called to do more, Merton was feeling that as well. And then he gets a visit from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who came to visit him for a couple of days at his monastery. So this movie is really just about that relationship in those 2 days. What do they share? What do they learn? What do they release? And so I, you may have heard, am going to be playing the role of Thomas Merton in this movie. And I'm meeting this afternoon with Gary Lundgren, who's the director, and he and I are going to solidify this whole thing, so keep us in mind for that. So obviously I've been immersing myself in Merton and have been coming across some really nice stuff, things that he has shared. Most of the recordings that we have of him teaching come from recordings that were made at Gethsemane when he was the novice master there. In fact, many of you may know James Finley, who is another. If you don't know James Finley, please check him out. He's, I think, one of the most vibrant spiritual teachers available today. I had the opportunity to interview him when I was leading the Shift Network's Mystics Summit, and it was my favorite interview out of about 20 that I did. The one with James Finley was the best. James Finley was a novice under Merton at Gethsemane back in the early 60s. And so these recordings come from those lectures that he gave the novices, which I then work a little bit. But let's take a listen to one of these, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Let me go ahead and share the screen. And Chris, if for any reason this starts to go wonky, just let me know.
You do the ordinary simple things that are around to be done. And as you do them with love, your knowledge of God increases without you realizing it. But then what happens with this is if you're not thinking about knowledge and you're not thinking about yourself, see, both those things are important, you're just simply doing something with love. And the love takes care of everything. There's a great deal of this in Sufism, very much this kind of thing. One Sufi, for example, says, "This reason of mine, which for long I made my guide, I have consumed in the effort to know God. My whole life has been spent, and with this weak reason I have learned this much alone, that I still know him not." Of course, now this is sort of standard. You get this in all this kind of literature. See, you go along with your reason and intelligence, and you push it as far as you can go, and you realize that you don't know God. You don't know God. Having accepted the fact that you don't know God, you just go along loving anyway. And as you go along doing things with love, you realize that you're coming close to him, and you suddenly find that you do know him. But as soon as you pay attention to the fact, you don't. See? Still, we learn by experience that when we are loving God, somehow or other he's close to us, somehow or other there's a knowledge of God built into that some way. See? That you can't explain and so forth, but it's there.
So was the sound pretty poor? Vicky, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Okay, so here's what we'll do then. The internet here is not as good as it could be. So I did ask the village there to have that video ready. So since you didn't get a chance to really see it, Chris, I see you sitting down. Why don't you go ahead and share the video from there, and we'll give it one more try. So whenever you're ready.
The Christian effort to become liberated from the world was not an effort to become liberated from something that was there, but an effort to become liberated from something that wasn't there. Maybe the world in that sense just isn't there. Maybe the trouble is thinking that it's there. Now, if you examine the great religions,
Chris, that's the wrong video.
all the great religions that started around the 6th century BC.
That's the video from last week. I sent you another one last night. That's it.
You do the ordinary simple things that are around to be done. And as you do them with love, your knowledge of God increases without your realizing it. Your knowledge of God increases without your realizing it. But then what happens with this is that you're not thinking about knowledge and you're not thinking about yourself. See, both those things are important. You're just simply doing something with love. And the love takes care of everything. There's a great deal of this in Sufism, very much this kind of thing. One Sufi, for example, says, "This reason of mine, which for long I made my guide, I have consumed in the effort to know God. My whole life has been spent, and with this weak reason I have learned this much alone, that I still know him not." Of course, now this is sort of standard. You get this in all this kind of literature. See, you go along with your reason and intelligence, and you push it as far as you can go, and you realize that you don't know God. You don't know God. You don't know God. Having accepted the fact that you don't know God, you just go along and love him anyway. And as you go along doing things with love, you realize that you're coming close to him, and you suddenly find that you do know him. But as soon as you pay attention to the fact, you don't. See, soon we learn by experience that when we are loving God, somehow or other, he's close to us. Somehow or other, there is a knowledge of God built into that some way. See, that you can't explain, and so forth and so forth.
Oh, but it's there.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Let's talk about that a little bit. So he talks about going along with reason and intelligence until you realize that you failed, that your reason and intelligence have failed in your great quest to understand God. We use our reason and intelligence because that's what we do use. This is what we've learned to use here in this physical, intellectual world. But if we want to break through or free from the limitations of that intellectual world, we have to ultimately let go of our need to figure it out and to simply love. So there is a maturation of spirit involved in this. Often we begin in an early phase of our religious or spiritual journey thinking that we can understand God. And so we establish dogmas, we establish doctrines and things that we are told that we have to believe. This is what religion is all about. Being told that we have to believe a certain set of criteria, of ideas and things that will somehow release us from belief itself. And yet we realize now, the further we go, the deeper we go, we realize the limitations of belief. Ultimately, we realize that nothing has changed in our quest to believe more. We realize that our lives are not any richer or greater or deeper than they were before we believed. So there's another step. And that step comes from letting go. Letting go of the need to understand God. And this is what Merton was referring to. The quicker we can let go of the need to have an image of God that we can comprehend and understand, that we can wrap our head around, the better. Because this ultimately leads to a relaxing of the intellectual mind and an opening of the spirit, of our soul, we could say, and of course the experience of love. So when we give up the need to understand God intellectually and choose only to love, this is where the journey really begins. into having a direct experience. And this is what we talk about really in one way or another every day. How do we come into a direct experience of the divine? I think all of us have come to the realization now that we're not going to do that through trying to understand intellectually. You can read every book. You can read great books like A Course in Miracles. You can read them and do so on strictly an individual or an intellectual basis, and yet you could read it 100 times and it won't go any deeper. But you could read the introduction of A Course in Miracles, for example, and it could click. And it's in that click where the experience takes hold. You could simply read the words, "Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God." And if that click happens, close the book. There's nothing left for you to get. There's nothing more for you to understand, because now you've stepped through the portal into the kingdom. Until then, we're wandering around outside the kingdom looking at maps, trying to figure out how to get in. The only way to get in is to love, because God is love. And if we say that God is love, but we try and get it in some other way, we're never going to be successful. So this is all about releasing the need to know God intellectually, to figure us out, to figure God out, to figure anything out. There's no need for us to try and do this anymore. This is why we come together every day and say, just open your heart. Just love the people that even you might think are hardest to love. In fact, that's like going to a gym. That's like lifting the heavier weights. And it's the heavier weights that are going to make you stronger. Going into a gym and lifting 1-pound weights 100 times, that's loving the people who love you. And Jesus talked about this when he was with us 2,000 years ago. There's very little reward in loving the people who love you or that are easy to love. But when you go into a gym, you go to a place where you're going to have to stretch that. You're going to have to lift the heavy weights. And it actually tears your muscle. That's why it hurts the next day. But as it heals, it's stronger. Not only our faith becomes stronger when we love even where it's more difficult to love, but we step even faster and deeper into the experience that we talk about here every day. So think less, love more. This is the key. And if we can just keep finding ways that we can love even the unlovable, then that love springs forward within us and we see it, feel it, experience it in every direction. So, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our dear Victoria and let her take it from there, and then we'll close it up with Penny Honey. So take it away, Vicki.
Thank you, Brother James. Good morning, everybody. This week is the Epiphany. It's when the 3 wise men came and gave gifts to the child Jesus. And that light that they followed is the same light that we follow today. And I love the way of love. That's what James is talking about. And to me, that word boils down practically into wholeheartedness. You want to see the face of God? Be wholehearted when you clean the toilet, when you wash your floor, when you cook. When we are wholehearted, there's no ambivalence in us. We are one thing, and that is a state of love. The most practical experience of love I know is to be wholeheartedly giving and present right where we are. If we start right where we are all the time and give ourselves wholeheartedly to whatever is in our present moment, only love, only now, right now, then as a byproduct, what Jimmy is talking about, that muscle gets stronger. So when someone's in front of you that upsets you or has hit a trigger of self judgment in yourself, we're more readied, we're prepared to wholeheartedly be present with them and give and love. Love is a state of being and doing, and it's that realization from the experience of it. It isn't something you can read about, or you can read about it, but it doesn't take effect until we actually do it. And the simplest way to do it is with whatever is in front of us all day long, every day. The reason it works so well is because we get happy. We get happy when we love. When no, if we live alone, I've lived alone for a few years. I got happy in being in love with whatever was in front of me, whether it's the kitchen counter or a neighbor. And that's something that is a way of life. And what it does is it brings us into natural union with one another. It brings us into that experience that God really is in everything. He's omnipresent, he's not omni everything. So, wholeheartedness in everything we do is the easiest, simplest, natural practice that becomes it. We become that whirling dervish. We become, it doesn't matter what we think anymore because love, it supersedes any thinking and it drops knowing. So thank you, Brother James. Wholeheartedness. That's it.
Oh, yeah, that's it. To be wholehearted rather than partially hearted or thinking that we could do any of this partially. And I'm glad that you brought up the Sufis again because Sufism is all about wholeheartedness. It's about giving your whole heart, all your mind, all your love to the divine, to God, or to love itself. When we give all of our love to love, then what returns is love. It's really that simple. So, Penny Honey, why don't you take it from there and take us home?
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Love will take care of it all. I like that thought. It's a nice feeling also, isn't it? You know, I had this quote that kept running through my mind as I was listening, and this is from one of the greatest teachers I've experienced. And he said this. He said, "I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is." Forrest Gump reminded us, because in his childlike state, in his willingness to be connected to the divine of who he was, and to not waver from that, we get reminded it resides within. I think Thomas Merton would have liked Forrest Gump. That thing about trying to understand this concept and these thoughts that take us into these places and cause us to ask questions and to review and to look at and to consider. That understanding thing for me is tied to I should already know. I should have the answer. I should be the smartest one in the room. I don't think that's unique to me. But when you look up the definition of understand, it actually says this. It says to perceive the intended meaning of words, language, or the speaker, to perceive. So as soon as I get in the business of trying to understand what it is that lights me up and invites me into my divinity, I limit it. Just in the process of understanding and trying to understand, because understand is to perceive, and I will limit my expression when I try to understand it because it will be limited by what I perceive. Do you see? We might want to let that go. Thomas Merton believed that life is not just a series of random events, but it's a symphony that we compose. And he encouraged us to take an active role in shaping our destinies and to participate fully and our experiences. Merton saw life as a continuous becoming process. And it's shaped by our choices and our experiences and our perceptions. And again, when I try to get in the understanding of all of that, I limit what it could be in my life and in the world. I think the world could use a little more love and a lot less thinking. I think that we could use a lot more care than trying to figure it out. I think therein lies the peace of God. Thank you. Thank you for letting.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Penny Honey, and thank you, Queen Victoria. We're so grateful to have your loving insight. And that's what love is. It's an insight. It's looking within to find the truth that is forever true, the reality that is forever real. We look within to find that which will never be found without. Another song, looking for love in all the wrong places. We're looking for love outside of ourselves and other people to find satisfaction in careers or possessions or whatever it may be. We're always looking outside of us, but insight, the insight that we're seeking to know God, which is to know love, which is to know who I really am and to know who you really are, that comes from looking within. And so, in this lesson of thinking less, not trying to figure it out, and loving more, we give our whole heart to love. We recognize where we are still holding back. We realize when we're sharing something other than love, maybe with someone we're having a difficult time with, maybe it's someone in our family or someone in the public eye, politically, whatever it may be, we recognize those moments. And this is where the heavy lifting begins. This is where we go into the spiritual gym. This is where we do the work. This is mind training, as you know. We have to actually retrain the mind to simply love, especially when we're challenged, especially when our backs are up against the wall, or when we think we've got it all figured out. We realize that there's no such thing as figuring it out intellectually. But if we can only love, only God, only now, stay with that motto. If we can do that, then the rest of it happens on its own. And to that we say, Amen, 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 e punto. Namaste, everyone. Have a beautiful Monday.